What's the vibe, to use the overused sort of phrase, of du jour at the moment in government around this? Because I asked Eamon Ryan yesterday in the post-cabinet thing, and I asked him how comfortable he would be with the fact that his legacy as the leader of the Green Party in government will be that he's lost perhaps a couple of TDs, but most importantly, is going to be responsible for a change in legislation that led potentially to hundreds, if not thousands of people being made homeless. And he said, we're going to sort it, and we're just going to do whatever we can to prevent people sleeping in Garda stations and in parks. I
think they know that they have lost in the public's eyes the argument, that they know that from a publicity perspective, this is irredeemable. That even if all of this comes good, and even if they are vindicated in time, that what they are doing is the least worst option. It's going to take so long for the truth of that to come out that it's not going to help them this side of a general election, no matter when that comes anyway. So I think that they know that that's lost, which in truth is why there is a little bit more focus on, and I'm guilty of focusing on this, but you're right to remind us of the human cost of all of this as well, about votes in the Dáil and what's going to happen. So the vote that's been happening this week, this non-binding vote on the Sinn Féin motion, is all window dressing to a point, because it's symbolism, but it's only symbolism and nothing more. But there's another vote coming next week. Labour are tabling a motion of no confidence, and if that passes, the government is literally sacked. A motion of no confidence to be passed in the Dáil triggers a general election, and suddenly this podcast looks very different because we're all doing it out on the roads, following political parties around the place. So what's happening now in Leinster House is that you're seeing the government, even though it's only symbolism, trying to make policy concessions to independent TDs, because basically it's a way of almost doing a confidence and supply deal. It's like the last government where Fianna Fáil supported it from the outside. That's basically the point that we're getting to now. If the vote goes through but the Greens lose one or two members and the coalition is once again in a minority, doesn't mean that anyone is sacked immediately, but it means that they're dependent on outside and independence. So you start making policy deals now so that in a vote next week, those independents aren't going to collapse your government, because they want to see those policies delivered.
So that's actually a point worth reflecting on in the overall how this is going to work and how the government is going to survive this, is that this can be quite a positive thing, to probably look for a better word, for a lot of independent TDs who can start to use this as a way of wielding influence then on government. They can be like, well, we'll back you in no confidence motion or in the counter motion regarding the eviction ban if you start doing X, Y, and Z, which I'd like you to do.
Yeah, and that you can argue that that's kind of part of the reason why people elect independent TDs, that maybe the circumstances come up where you're able to leverage stuff out of the government that you wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah.
Like, it goes back to the conversation we've had here many times before, though, is that like people will eventually have no choice but to leave, and they will leave, because how can you stay if you have nowhere to live? And like, that's another thing that's coming up in the messages. I would have to leave Ireland. There are 2 houses to rent in my town of 25,000 people. So you are going to go back to that situation, and then you're going to have government ministers saying, but young people love to travel, they love to experience things. Yeah, they do love to travel and experience
things. They also love to live in the same places that all their friends are. And they love to live where their families are.
And they like to have a support network around them and have a family, and all of those things. Of course, it's going to be the bracket that will go because they like to travel, but that person is very clearly saying they would have no choice but to leave because of the circumstances. And I just find that like, is that almost sort of like a cop-out then from the ministers who'll say like, oh, but they love to travel. I mean, I just think if they don't have a choice, there's no choice being left here now.